is 6:31. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
And let's take a look at today's front pages for you now. And the Times reports that nursing unions are set to reject a final pay offer from the government in a move that could lead to another wave of strikes across the NHS.
The Telegraph has a report about deaths supposedly rising in the 2 weeks during and after the first round of industrial action by junior doctors.
The Eye leads with the tens of thousands of families reportedly fighting to unlock trust funds set up for their children.
The Express says Prince Harry's visit to Britain for the coronation will leave no time for him to mend fences with the family.
Senior members of the Conservative Party are turning against the Home Secretary, that's according to The Guardian.
And the Mirror has news that a convicted rapist has been given access to a £7.2 million jackpot he won in 2004 after a lengthy legal battle.
The Sun leads with the news that Sarah Ferguson has not been invited to the coronation.
And The Star says the price of deodorants is heading for £5 a can, in fears of what the paper describes as a pongdemic. It's the pits.
Oh dear. Well, joining us this morning is broadcaster Liz Kershaw and the senior reporter at the Eye newspaper, Benjamin Butterworth. Good morning to both of you.
Hiya. Good morning.
Have you with us. Liz, let's start with you, shall we? And this is the junior doctors' strike being covered by the Telegraph.
Yeah, well, we're in a real health crisis, aren't we, with at least 7 million people waiting for really necessary procedures and operations, and waiting times in A&E are going up again. Maybe more on that later in the programme, but you can now expect to wait 12 hours in A&E. My auntie, who's 91, had to wait from 6 p.m. till 2 a.m. the other day. And meanwhile now, the junior doctors are on strike. Now, junior doctors doesn't mean kids.
Oh, no.
It means all doctors who aren't consultants. So most doctors, I think it's something like 40% of hospital NHS staff are junior doctors. So they've been striking. And I was sitting there when they started on Monday, and it actually said that on the TV that the government had said, don't do anything risky this week. You know, because they don't want you turning up. What do you do? Not drive your car, not walk downstairs.
We'll avoid the DIY.
Not have a drink. I don't know. But anyway, we've all got to avoid going to hospital at all costs, as you would anyway. But yeah, the figures are... The ONS, I became aware of this during COVID. It does a rolling 5-year average weekly deaths in the UK. And during the weeks of the last junior doctor strike, some 22,021 deaths were recorded in England between February the 25th and March the 10th, which was 3.9% above the 5-year average. But in the week of the junior doctor strike and the one following, 22,571 deaths were registered, which was 11.1% above the average. So while there's got to be more of a look at this, because you're not looking at one-offs, so you're looking at trends, and it could be that, for instance, that the Easter period affected it because people don't register deaths during bank holidays, so it needs to be looked at. But the suggestion is that there is a direct link between doctors not being in work and people not getting treatment and people dying. Well,
exactly. I mean, come on, Sherlock. I mean,
you nearly said it.
I mean, of course there is. You know, there are consequences to these actions. And to be fair to junior doctors, Benjamin, they are going to be aware of this. I mean, you've got to presume they're not doing this lightly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, the idea that if you don't get treatment as quickly there'll be consequences is obviously possible. But the point is that the reason they've gone on strike is because they're on £14 an hour in some cases. You know, they start on £29,000. And these are people who have worked extraordinarily hard. I mean, to qualify as a doctor really is the height of self-discipline to get to that point. You know, they've studied for 7 years. They've given up great swathes of their social life, of other better paid jobs that people like that could have done. And I think that it is disrespectful that we pay them so little. And I think to try and blame them for standing up for themselves and to trying to be paid appropriately, not excessively, I think that's completely unreasonable. And it's the audacity of the government or of some right-wing newspapers to try and criticise them for that. I think it's completely unfair.
Well, it's not criticising them, it's merely stating the numbers and the possible analogy between the two. But apart from the fact you invest 7 years training to be a doctor, and I lived with medics when I was at university. They didn't give up on their social life, I can guarantee that. But boy, they know how to party. In fact, aren't there more sort of drinkers and smokers among doctors than anything else? But they do have an enormous debt of student fees because it's 7 years as opposed to 3 or 4. And I just think it's ridiculous that as a country, as a state, we are charging kids to be trained to work in the National Health Service. So I've said this before, why don't you just go to medical school for free and sign up like you do in the army? It's like there's a report last night on news, I thought it was on GBNEWS, about, I think it was, Filipino girls and boys training to be nurses in the Philippines, and they have to sign up for 2 years, that's all. They're talking about increasing it, to work in the Philippines as a nurse once qualified. But then 30,000 of them come here because we poach them, we pay them 5 times as much, so it's affecting the Philippines. But why don't we train all our doctors and all our nurses without charging them fees, and then sign them up for 10 years or something like that? And
yeah, but I think the question is, why are such a proportion leaving the health service? You know, there's high numbers among GPs, among doctors who work in A&E. It's because it's stressful, and because, a bit like those Filipino nurses, they can leave here and go to Australia and get twice as much as we pay.
Well,
actually, it's not, because I mean, this is part of the problem here. Money is clearly a big factor, but it's not just money, it's working conditions.
The hours are better than when my friends that I shared with at uni went in. They were doing, like, cruel hours a week, you know, day, night, and they've reduced that. But yeah, you can go to Australia. There was some Outback posts advertising for a GP recently, and it's like free house and 450,000 a year. The Australian government is offering really lucrative package. But we deserve it, because for years we've not been letting kids with 4 A-star A-levels go to medical school, not enough places, we've limited it. And then we've been pinching doctors from Nigeria and all over the world. And now, you know, it's comeback time, because there are emerging countries now that are taking hours. It really just needs all sorting out.
It does. Well, meanwhile, sort of sticking on the theme, Benjamin, in the Times, there could be more nurses' strikes. I mean, we were told this was resolved.
Yes, this is what we thought was over, but what's the phrase? We thought it was all over. It's not now. So the Times reports, that's almost it, right? The Times reports that nurses, they had agreed a pay deal, which was to have a 5% pay rise from this month, and then to have some money back for a COVID bonus and 2% back for the last year. Well, apparently, it's thought that nurses, the result of this strike, which is out later today, it's feared that they're going to reject that deal. Now, the union representing nurses had recommended they accept it. The health secretary had said that was the last offer. And what this really means for most people is that you could have a junior doctor's strike at the same time as a nurse's strike. Now, lots of these strikes have actually not affected most hospitals. It's not been quite so devastating as feared. But you have both of those at the same time, and I think that would be the most serious disruption that we've had yet.
I mean, that would be a nightmare, actually. But as you say, it's difficult in how we report it, because you know, when the nurses' strikes were happening, the number of people getting in touch saying, well, they're not on strike where I am.
Yeah, well, in Milton Keynes, there was never our local hospital was never affected at all. Right. It was something like 30% of NHS trusts were actually on strike. So it wasn't nationwide as it was represented.
No.
But, you know, the item you had on earlier about the housing crisis and rents rocketing actually has a lot to do with, I think, why lots of these people are asking for pay rises. You know, yes, the 35% that junior doctors have asked for, I know lots of people will think, oh, that's crazy. But the cost of living, by which I mean the rent that they have to pay as a proportion of their income, or the amount they would have to save to get a mortgage, is vastly, vastly more, 6, 7, 8 times more than what it would have been 2 generations ago.
I was thinking about...
That's a very practical problem.
I was thinking about the 35. The percentage is an unhelpful figure, isn't it? In the sense that, because it's a lot of money, and everyone immediately goes, and myself included, so you can't have that. But actually, what's it equate to? About £10,000. You know, put them from 29,000 to 39,000. I mean, I know it's a lot of money. I know it's a big pay rise, but it's not extortionate in one sense.
And as Liz very rightly pointed out, the cost of training is very high. And if these people leave or they change careers, so they're no longer in the NHS, well, then it costs us a damn sight more than that to find a new one.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, we'll have to watch with the nurses. I mean, they were asking for something like 19%, weren't they? So, I mean, many people at the time were saying, would they settle for something like 5%? I mean, it was a big move down.
Big drop.
It is.
They were...
But inflation is expected to be about 5% for the middle of this year, so maybe it will be in line with the actual rise.
Yeah.
I read the other day, we spend 12% of our GDP on the NHS. That's £1 in £8 in the whole country.
It's a lot of money.
Of the whole Treasury's budget and what the government can spend goes on. There's so much waste as well.
It needs to be looked at.
It really does, yeah. Liz, should we have a look at a pothole story?
Yes.
Telegraph.
Yes,
Something
please.
different.
Right, so we saw Arnie Schwarzenegger the other day, didn't we?
He was filling in
with
potholes.
with some asphalt. And he was shoveling it and then whacking it down. And then somebody came along and said to him, you shouldn't have done that because you're in the process of laying some cables, so we're just going to scoop it all out. Anyway, and Rod Stewart did it. Now, I've been tempted, come to that in a minute, but this lad in Worcestershire got sick of so many potholes in the road on his estate that he decided to turn it into a crazy golf pitch. So he put signs up, High Street Crazy Golf potholes now open, and so you can get a putter and a ball and you can go around the potholes and see how you do it. It's great because what it's done, it's drawn attention to a massive issue.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to go out in the dark soon.
How are you?
You know the A5 dual carriageway? So up from Milton Keynes to Towcester.
Yeah.
Well, that's a Roman road. The Romans built that.
Oh, yeah.
It's the road from London to Holyhead to get it to Wales and Ireland. I think it's not been repaired since 50 AD. Because I've just had to stop using it. The potholes are so bad, and it's single track. Like you got to swerve around the potholes.
Yeah. And that's dangerous in itself.
It's dangerous if you don't see it, and you're higher up than me in your car. But in my car, if you don't see it and you go into it, and the speed limit's 60, what a hell of a bang! And they've put signs up now saying 40, so they know it's bad. But then somebody comes up behind you and they're not aware of it. But I thought you can't always see them coming. So if I go out at night in the dark, fill them with potting compost, put some big yellow dahlias in or something, and then as you're going a road, because you know Roman roads are straight, but they go like that. So as you're going along, you won't go over a bump and go straight into a pothole because you'll get a bit of.
You'll see
like
the dahlias.
seeing those plants that you think, oh, a pothole right in the middle of the road. What do you think? Do you think it's illegal?
Yes. Basically, yes.
Meanwhile, I've had to stop going to Towcester to Tesco and Aldi and Waitrose because it's just hazardous.
Yeah.
I go the other way now.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, to Milton Keynes.
It's not good though. It isn't
ridiculous.
good.
And on the guy who runs the car wash in Towcester,
Oh, here we go.
he said, "Oh, I've never seen." Yeah, not that sexy one down the road. He says, "Oh, I've never seen you before," and I said, "No, I'm not. I can't come up here because of the state of the roads." And he says, "Oh, yes, our roads are better in Albania." It's like I nearly strangled him. But I've been to Iceland where they've got so much frost and ice and snow. The roads are superb. They're like Silverstone racetrack. Why are our roads so bad?
Yeah,
I was talking to someone the other day about the next election. They said the next election is going to be won on local issues such as potholes, because those are the things every day that's damaging our cars.
Yeah.
Putting us in danger.
Well, I've had 2 blowouts of tyres in the last 2 years, and I'm sure it's because you go bang in a pothole and it damages your tyre and then 30 miles down the road.
Yeah. Oh, no, it does. It causes a lot of damage and costs us a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's crackers. Now, senior Tories, Benjamin, according to The Guardian, are turning against the Home Secretary.
They are.
Why?
Suella Braverman. So she's been criticised. They haven't named a senior Tory in The Guardian, but they have spoken to The Guardian. Apparently they were a senior minister under Boris Johnson, and they said that she is, I've lost it, a real racist bigot is what they've called her. Now this comes after yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, when Saeed Avasi, who was a minister under David Cameron and then a Tory member of the House of Lords, who went round and said, and she's obviously not white and she's Muslim, and she said that Suella Braverman is being racist over things like saying that grooming gangs are being done overwhelmingly by Pakistani men. And then this week we've had a row over the dolls, I don't know if I can use the word, the racist dolls, and that was put up by a pub in Kent and then removed by police. Suella Braverman said it's good that 6 officers went and removed these black-faced dolls, and that has caused quite a row. So there's lots of Tories that are saying she's racist and she should be removed.
It's quite an accusation to make of someone who is of colour.
It is.
Why is it racist for her to say that gollywogs that were hanging on ropes, actually, behind the bar, that wasn't shown in all the media, but they had nooses round their necks on display, a dozen of them. Why is it wrong for Suella Braverman to say that it was wrong for the police to go and remove them? That was really racist.
No, they should have removed them. That's certainly my opinion.
Yeah, yes, they should.
But she complained about that. Suella Braverman complained. She said that the police shouldn't be putting resource into things like that when people are getting mugged. Well,
isn't that fair enough?
I would suggest that both of them are appropriate things to change. And that pub in question now has a sign saying, if you're offended, don't come in, which some people have suggested is saying, well, if you're a black person, don't come in, is some people's interpretation of that. So this has really blown up in Suella Braverman's face because she decided to get involved in that row with that pub. It comes after the stuff about the Pakistani grooming gangs comment that she made. She called small boats an invasion. And I think, the truth is there'll be lots of people that agree with some of those things, that feel like she's hitting a nerve. But what a lot of her own colleagues are saying is that this isn't acceptable, that it's, one of the comments reported in The Guardian is they say Britain isn't as grotesque as she thinks it is. I think the suggestion is that she's sort of playing to the lowest common denominator. And if you think about those Labour attack adverts about Rishi Sunak not wanting to lock up child groomers or whatever, it looks like politics is getting pretty filthy at the moment.
Can I just say, I've got a special request to the media. Can we stop calling the vessels coming across the channel the small boats? Because the small boats, historically, were the small boats of the people of Kent that went across in hazardous conditions to Dunkirk to rescue the British troops on the beaches who were trapped. So they've always been known as the small boats. So it just really
irks you.
Yes, it does.
Well,
I don't think a dinghy made specifically for the purpose in China, smuggled by gangs, that's got a hardboard bottom and is clearly not seaworthy with 50 guys in it, is in the same sort of category as the small boats.
No, people now know what you're referring to.
But why have we changed it from dinghies? Why are they now called the small boats? Why that's changed subtly and slowly?
Well, because they're not dinghies, are they? Dinghies.
Well, they're inflatables.
Not all of them.
Well, right, okay. We'll have to have different names for them then.
We will. Right, let's have a look at hands-free cars, Liz.
Oh, yeah. Did you see this on the telly? I just think it's terrifying.
Do you?
Now, they're only allowed to be used on motorways. You can't sort of sit back and watch a video or on your phone or read a paper because there's a detector on the dashboard that can see if you're not watching the road. So I don't really see the point. So basically, you have to sit there with your arms folded because your instinct is, but you've got to watch the road. So I can't think of anything more terrifying. You're not in control, but you've got to be completely aware. Now, where I think these will be good if they can develop them is in London now, where at 5 o'clock in the morning I have to drive at 20 miles an hour where there's not another car in sight.
Yeah.
And I do sit there thinking, I could be doing my knitting. So that would be great, wouldn't it? If I could just sit there like this all the way down.
Would it let you knit though?
Past Lord's
You can't knit. What
I don't knit. Something like that.
Yeah.
I could do a painting. I could do a watercolour of Regent's Park. All through Maida Vale, I'm just sitting there.
Yeah.
It's so painful. I've had one ticket just because I nudged 27.
Serves you right. Stick to the rules.
But yeah, so that's supposed to be the future, but it's not driverless cars, which aren't fully tested and legal yet. It's hands-free cars.
Yeah.
Hands-free, but your eyes are still
Hands-free, but you have to be totally focused on the road.
So you could drive one of them, Benjamin.
I mean, I can't drive. I can crash, but I can't drive. The idea terrifies me, to be honest, because, you know, there was a story in the US recently of someone who went off a cliff edge. Now, it was later suggested that that had been intentional on his part. But, you know, I think there's a question about things like that where, you know, it's hard to work out what's gone in a car when the people aren't really driving it. I think given how many crashes we have as it is, the idea that people will just be sat back trusting a machine. You know, I read a story...
There'll be fewer crashes. I mean, that's the argument. And look, I get it. It's a scary prospect. But the idea is these things will react faster than we can because they're constantly monitoring what's in front and what's behind.
But then with people who are still driving the old-fashioned way, you know, how can they judge human instincts of other cars around them? That's a bit harder when it's a machine. You know, I saw a story in the New York Post only yesterday of a lift that had shot 15 floors in 30 seconds and nearly killed the poor man inside it. Well, if we still haven't got lifts right, I'm worried about getting driverless cars right.
I've just thought of a great idea for a murder mystery story that I must write a novel where you can just hack into somebody's car and you can bump them off when they're driving down the M1 by making it swerve.
Well, at least they won't hit the pot.
That's the, you know, Agatha Christie had cyanide. This Kershaw's got driverless.
All right, good luck with that one, Liz. Let's have a look at finish up with Fergie in the sun.
Yeah. She ain't going nowhere.
Oh.
She's not going... Sorry, my voice is really losing.
Have you mentioned you went to see Elton John?
2 days ago. I went 2 days ago, and my voice is struggling. He's 76 years old. He's done 292 shows on his farewell tour, and his voice survives a lot stronger than mine. But
was he good though?
he was very good.
Do you know those
tickets left?
You know those people at the Palace Theatre who spoiled the performance? The police had to. That was him at Elton John.
Yeah, the riot police were needed. Me and Camilla Tominey were there. She can sing much better than me. Now, Sarah Ferguson. Speaking of classy ladies, Sarah Ferguson is not going to the coronation, despite the fact that Meghan Markle won't be there. So the suggestion is there's an empty seat. Could she have had it?
Well, she'd have to sit next to Harry.
Well, yeah, that's true. Well, I'm sure they can rearrange the seats, Stephen. But her children, Eugenie and Beatrice, the princesses, will be there. Prince Andrew will obviously be there, but they haven't invited her. And the question is, why was she snubbed? Because she was at the Queen's funeral, so she's going to be watching it at home at Royal Lodge.
I'm not surprised by this because they are still very, very good friends. They still live together, don't they, herself?
They do, and she was invited to Christmas at Sandringham for the first time in 30 years. And so the suggestion was that she's back in the inner circle, but it looks like it's not. But I think with these things, you know, the rules are so archaic and formal about who is and isn't invited. And to be honest, she is the ex-wife of like 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, but I've always thought there's something funny going on there, you know. I've always thought to myself, Sarah Ferguson, she's got something on Prince Andrew, you know, because although she wasn't welcomed by Prince Philip at Balmoral for Christmas, for summer, etc., she's never completely, she's still been living in a royal residence, and she's been living with her ex-husband for 25. It's a rum do that.
Well, I
think she knows something. I'll tell you what I think it is after.
All right. Oh, there you go. You sneaky devil,
I'm a gossip.
You are a gossip. I just think they get on. That's fine. That's fine. That's quite nice.
I mean, I think she's sort of the ultimate grifter. The fact that she's managed to remain world famous for all this time. And she's got a book out at the moment, and she's been on every chat show imaginable. You know, and she got front pages for saying that she'd hired a therapist for the dogs to try and deal with the grief of leaving the Queen. I mean, you know, she's managed to keep the celebrity thing going pretty well.
She has. Liz, Benjamin, got to leave it there. Thank you both very much indeed. Don't go anywhere. All your top stories coming up after the weather.